Om Sadashiva Samarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om Om Shanti 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 Om Namaste. Ah, okay, Shwara, okay. Now Shwara decides to block my two ears, so I have that kind of strange sound as I speak. So, when the seer understands the doer to be none other than the gunas and knows the self which is beyond the gunas, he attains my nature. So he refers to the seeker of truth as a seer, which is an interesting kind of wording, you know. So when the seeker, right to say the seeker or the inquirer, you know, or the yogi, understand the doer to be just the Ishvara system, which originates from the gunas, and comes to the understanding of the self, the true self, one's true self, which is beyond Ishvara and the gunas. He attains by my nature. So now Krishna is talking from the standpoint of Nirguna Brahman, Nirguna Brahman, Nirguna Ishvara. Very annoying this thing. He's talking from that angle. And he says that the seeker, the inquirer, gets to the knowledge of the self, which is non-dual, which is beyond the gunas. So when we say beyond the gunas, it's beyond Ishvara Jiva Jagata. Okay, it's even beyond Ishvara, because Ishvara is, as we know, Saguna by nature. Saguna Ishvara, as you keep the wording, Saguna Ishvara is Saguna by nature. So the seer, the seeker, the inquirer, is going to understand that the apparent actions coming through that body, mind, sense complex, who now is searching for the true nature of God, true nature of the self. So this inquirer, you know, understands that whatsoever effort or doing one does, it's not done by any entity, because the entity is not really there. The entity is a kind of a shadow, okay? Everything is happening organically. The entity has some say in this process. And what the entity has to say is establish my goal, is understanding the true nature of reality, and I'm going to be an instrument by which the Ishvara system unfolds reality to myself, in myself, as myself. But without that sense that I'm doing things, you know, because any sense that I'm doing things, even at the latest stage of self-inquiry and self-investigation, is still the ahankara, which represents the impediment for self-realization to take place. Self-realization requires that the ahankara steps aside, steps out of the picture, you understand, to understand and to allow the true nature of reality to emerge, to unfold. It's not that the body mind sense complex is going to be destroyed physically or mentally. No, it's going to just open up this space so that reality can be unfolded and revealed to the very, very, very body mind sense complex. And then the ahankara is going to say, oh, now I understood. Yeah? I'm not doing anything. The reality is that not even Ishvara is doing everything, even though I must understand that within this order of reality, Ishvara is the ultimate doer. And then what is the purpose? What is my function? What is my, you know, why I'm here if I'm not here to do anything? So as well, I should not be manifested as a body, mind, sense complex. No, you have something to do. Empty yourself of the notion that you are going to do things in this life. Not that you're gonna not clean the dishes and this and that, but the sense that I am doing things in this order of reality. Shwara is doing everything through its systems, the gunas, the elements, and one's conditioning, one's program, one's swadharma, my apparent nature. Everything has to be in harmony. Our nature has to be respected as well as human nature and everything. But deep inside, the ahankara has to get to that subtlety of understanding that he should never own the scene, own the actions, and own everything, saying that my life, my thoughts, my results, my enjoyments, my sufferings, that is what needs to be dissolved, you know. So therefore, when the seeker understands that the doer that he always believed to be himself should be just Ishvara system, as I like to put, the gunas, the elements, one's human nature, everything let it be in harmony with one's nature. And if one's nature is not in harmony with the Dharma, so try to direct your human nature by saying no to this, no to that, and invite this and that other kind of virtues to be developed. So, and then one is living in harmony with the Dharma, knowing that the gunas, they are the one moving everything around here. And then what is left of the Jivatma? What is left of this entity? So if it's not the doer, and it just has to understand that there is a higher power, higher intelligence moving everything, and then it means to say that I'm just a puppet. No, I'm not a puppet. Not at all. My ideas, my notions, my thoughts, my words, rarely they are really conscious. Rarely my thoughts are deliberate thoughts. I have to develop a certain understanding to the point that I myself, this reflect consciousness, this body, mind, sense complex, this human consciousness becomes more and more like a witnessing consciousness, experiencing the world and experience this instrument, knowing perfectly well that this instrument is a gift given by Saguna Ishwara, which fundamentally is Nirguna Ishwara. So if one comes to that understanding, if one begins living from that perspective, one has, in the language of Gita, attained my nature, but in our language, understood one's nature as my own nature, understood Tattvamasi, understood that the Jivatma is in reality Atma, Paramatma. Now, questions,
Hey,
please.
Alan. This reminds me of a verse in the 13th chapter. When I heard this verse, I thought, I've heard this verse before. And the 29th verse in the 13th chapter says, he who sees that all actions are done by Prakriti, and likewise that the self is not the doer, he verily sees.
Yeah.
So it's the same.
Yeah, it's the same. It has a different structure, which gives space for different unfoldments. everything is being done by Prakriti, by Gunas, by Maya. No? And one understands that I'm not doing anything, and then again I'm raising the question. Then why I'm participating in all of this? Just to transcend the sense that you are the thinker of your thoughts, the doer of your actions. The knower of your notions, and the enjoyer and sufferer of your prerogative. So transcending that until you come to understand that you are the witnessing consciousness, illumining and revealing all of that. So, and then one has got the final understanding. And this final understanding does not destroy the body-mind-sense complex, but makes it in a way that once begin living from the platform, so to speak, of one's true divine nature, light, reflect light of consciousness, experience more like witnessing consciousness without hooks or much emotional hooks or attachments or fears and desires in regards to anything that it illumines and reveals. That is the true nature of the self. That is the true nature of the Jiva. And the Jiva much attain this understanding in regards to its true nature by efforting, in the lights of these teachings. But the whole effort is not to reinforce the sense that I am doing great spiritual work. The effort is that by which you dissipate the feeling that I'm doing anything. It appears to be tremendously contradictory, but it's not. There are two orders. One is the ahamkara. The ahamkara needs to be dissolved, dissipated in the light of knowledge, understanding. And then which arise is the true nature of the individual self as the absolute self, as Paramatma. So the jiva does not die. The jiva just owns its divine nature, one's true nature, and lives from that perspective. Anything from you, Lynn?
Not really. Yeah, the witnessing. It's like you start to do the asanga part, just the distance, a little gap between. I don't know, some little distance between the person you think you are, the person,
Yeah.
rather than the being, and I don't know how to say it.
No, you said it.
But I appreciate that gap more and more, and how it delivers that dispassion,
Yeah.
dharmic dispassion. Yeah.
Yeah. It's all
Payoff.
part of it. It's all part of it. Vairagya, and then asanga, distancing between you, your thoughts, your feelings, your words, and your results. So you start objectifying this ahamkara, this strange entity that in reality it's unsubstantial. What we have is the body mind sense with reflect consciousness. The body mind sense is energy. You can witness that as the element, but the reflection happens something strange with the reflection of consciousness, which is the production of the ahamkara. Ahamkara is the one who is going to steal or rob. The functions of this reflection is my consciousness, my thoughts, my notions, my experience, and my words, my actions. So this sense of ownership is a very strange thing. And if we look into it very careful, it's difficult to find it. That's why Ramana Maharaj says, like, just go and look for this I, look for this ego, look for this mind. He used to use more the term of mind. Look for this mind, and then you're going to see that you're never going to see and find it because it's non-existent. It's not non-existent in the sense that the self, you can never find it as this or that. But the ahankara is non-existence because we believe it to be composed by these and these and these and that attributes, infinity of attributes to make up what we call ahankara is evidently something which belongs to Mithya. And in Mithya, everything should be found as this and this and this and not this. So, by its properties and attributes, when you look for the ahankara, you don't find. Apparently, it has attributes, but the attributes, they all belong to Prakriti. And they don't belong to any entity because this entity is a false entity. Now, ahankara is something very difficult to pinpoint and to explain in words what it is. It is a phenomenon everybody experience, but once we examine it, we have to either cry or laugh, by something that is so false, so fictitious, all this, you know, stealing of different kind of phenomenon that belongs to the Shwara system. So we can never say that this is my thought. But for example, at a certain level, people identify with their thoughts. So how can we say this is my thought? Human being very rarely has deliberate thoughts. And even when we say now I'm going to control and think like this, oh, okay, the best thing we can do is try to think in the light of the revelations of the sacred texts of the Vedas, and then you start using those vritis and adopting those vritis because you trust the scriptures, and the scriptures say that those vritis are in harmony with reality, in harmony with what you are. And then so you borrow those vritis and then you start living from those vritis. But even those that what we would call true deliberate thinking process, they belong to reveal the scriptures. So the only difference is that those kind of thoughts now have the potential to reveal to you that which your true nature, which is beyond any vritti, any thought, any gunas. Krishna completes the analysis of the gunas. Nobody can escape the three gunas. Let's see what he said. Let's remember the definition of ahamkara is the body-mind complex with reflect consciousness. So in Panchadasi is referred to as Chidabhasa. What is the ahamkara? It's reflect consciousness, to put it simple, okay? Because the body-mind or the subtle body is going to produce the reflect consciousness. In other words, reflect consciousness presupposes a reflecting medium. So we may say like Chidabhasa is a reflecting medium and the reflection, which is the ahamkara. So here he says is the reflecting medium and reflect consciousness. The live body-mind complex is called the ahamkara. See another way to see what is the ahamkara. It is more in a kind of a scholar or didactic or way to teach. Ahamkara the body-mind complex, once it's alive, is called ahamkara, which is one's lower nature, which is also called the ego. And this ego is a byproduct of these gunas. The point is that I like to put the ego. It all depends on how we define what the ego is. You know, if we say that the ego is an impostor, the ego is ignorance, the ego is delusion, the ego is a robber that steals things which belongs to the Ishvara system, and so on. And then we say, yes, of course, we must kill the ego. We must kill the mind, as Ramana used to say. Yeah? It is my lower nature. It is your lower nature, but it is your only apparent nature. And then what would be the lower nature of this reflected body-mind-sense complex? Okay, so what is the reflection under the spell of avidya? Total ignorance in respect to one's true nature, therefore total identification with one's attitudes, thoughts, words, and actions and results. Mind, 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 mind. Then my my inferior nature, what is the pure inferior nature of reflect consciousness? Is aham. Aham. I am. I exist. This is the purest form of the ego. Now, we have already defined that the ahamkara is reflect consciousness. Ahamkara, under the spell of avidya, ignorance, is going to be aham, I am a woman with a name, a history, a date of birth, and so on, so on, so on. Okay? This is ahamkara under the spell of ignorance. So what would be the ahamkara? Because it is reflected consciousness, free from the spell of avidya or ignorance, is aham no longer defined as the attributes of the body, mind, sense complex, which brings about the sense of authorship, doership, ownership, and the whole trouble, So it is my lower nature, yes, but it's called the ego under the spell of ignorance, or sometimes it's just a question of wording and defining certain word. The ego sometimes I like to put the ego is not going to be destroyed. It's going to be properly educated and purified, spiritualized in a way that the ego is going to be, the reflect consciousness, totally identified with the true nature of the self. Yeah? So even the ego, highly purified under the influence of a lot of sattva guna, clarity, knowledge, understanding of what the scriptures are pointing to, okay, can never escape the gunas. So it's a highly sattvic, reflected consciousness. So can we call it a ego? Yes, but ego in general is understood to see a very, very stupid and ignorant entity with full of vanity and I and mine, look at me, and arrogance and violence and a dharmic tendency and so on. So it all depends on how we define this word ego. I like to make this distinction because fundamentally, didactically, the ego is reflect consciousness, and reflect consciousness can be purified to the point that it knows and it lives from that perspective of knowledge, and therefore express itself from there without the sense of authorship, doership, ownership, enjoyership, suffership. That's what Nisargadatta Maharaj used to call pure consciousness. And then he used to say, even pure consciousness is not the reality. You have to go beyond pure consciousness to the absolute. So the only thing is that he used to put it a lot of the times in terms of experiential language that would give us impression that the absolute could be experienced by the aham, by the consciousness. So now I am pure consciousness. Stay with the thought feeling, I am, I am, I am, and then you're going to experience bliss and peace and all those things, and then stays with it, stay, and then one day you're going to go into the absolute. But the absolute is it's he's presented as if it is Nirvikalpa Samad. But to Vedanta, now our Sampradaya, self-knowledge is only possible through profound, direct knowledge, which begins from the knowledge of the books and so on, but it is consolidated by Aparokshayana, direct, immediate knowledge. Yeah? The live body-mind complex is called Ahankara. Ahankara is my lower nature. What is my higher nature? My higher nature is Nirguna Atma. No, no attributes, the only reality, that in which this apparent order appears, and then we have Brahman in its lower nature, which is Saguna Brahman, and then we have Jagata, which is naturally is Saguna, is made out of gunas, and we have the Jiva in its lower nature as reflect consciousness under the spell of Maya, no? Ignorance. But fundamentally, everything except, I mean, even Jagata, because Jagata can never realize its true nature. Jivas can realize its true nature, or higher nature, as Swamiji likes to put. Ishvara does not need to realize its higher nature because Ishvara is said to be pure knowledge, which somehow leaks some of this knowledge to us, giving us some sattvaguna, so that we can understand the true nature of the self. Of course, Ishvara is self-realized, has its knowledge of the reality of the self, and it's the knowledge of the entire mithya phenomenon, past, present, and future, as the scriptures say. So, but fundamentally, everything is divine. Everything is the self, even Jagata, although Jagata cannot realize that. Not only Jagata, even Jivas, like animals, apparently from what we know, cannot realize that, even though Ramana Maharaj has challenged everyone's mind and intellect, saying that the cow Lakshmi got enlightened during her lifetime due to association with the Guru. Okay, so all of that to remind us that we have these three gunas, we are a mixture of these three gunas. These three gunas, they are going to to be organized and to constitute our inferior nature, and which is composed of the elements. So the elements contain the three energies. So each one of the elements, especially the more subtle elements, have to be more and more proportionally speaking sattvic, and so on. So the second point is Krishna indicates whatever the type of guna, we cannot avoid the sense of limitation, of course. Of course. Anything that has attributes is an limiting adjunct, as we say, a limiting element. Why? because even a flower is wonderful. Why? Because this flower is very rare and has this perfume, which is considered one of the best perfumes in this planet. And then it's, oh, then this is a limitless flower. I say, no, it's limited by only one aroma, one perfume. It cannot have all other perfumes. So anything is going to, and then Ishwara. Ishwara has all the knowledge, okay? All the attributes. Yeah? And then we say, okay, and then Ishwara, as a phenomenon, Ishvara is absolutely limitless. There is no limitation. Yeah? And say, no, Ishvara has is still a weakness. What is the weakness of Ishvara? Is subject to appearance and disappearance. When Maya somehow brings about the conditions, Ishvara shines. And together with Ishvara, Jiva, and Jagata, Ishvara is the boss of Nitya. Yeah? Although, whereas the consciousness is free and independent from any factor, is that which is never not present, and furthermore, is the only reality. The second important point, sure, let me stop this one here. Krishna indicates that whatever the type, the guna bondage, we cannot avoid. Each guna binds a person. So each guna binds up a person. It's a fact. Okay? But it's not a law written on stone, so to speak. You understand? Because in certain cases, there are individuals highly developed, and of course, in order to be highly developed, the individual has to have more predominance of sattva guna, and then sattva guna is coming first, rajoguna is coming second, tamoguna is coming third. It's a beautiful, perfect geometric kind of personality or jiva structure, and the individual is not bound by anything. But how so? It is not bound if he has understood its nature beyond the gunas. He's going to have a personality which is dominated by sattva guna, having rajoguna behind, and tamaguna third in line. Okay, but he is not bound by the gunas. Although it is still a body, mind, sense complex under the dominance of sattva guna, but within itself, it has transcended the identification with one's guna predominance. Okay? So when Krishna is talking about that, he's talking this, of course, it's understandable, to the disciples, to the students, which are still anyanis. Huh? Still, they have some ignorance controlling and conditioning their lives, even if they are highly evolved. They have a lot of sattva guna, a lot of great insights, a lot of great states of mind. But for as long as the disciple or the student is identified with those states of mind or those kind of environments conducive to those states of mind, it's still bound. It's still bound. Oh no, but the person does not experience any suffering, any irritation, this and that. Wait and see. The moment that the environment changes, the moment that his or her state of mind changes, there will be a great feeling of limitation and incompletion. Because the proper environment and the proper state of mind should be used not for the sake of our enjoyment, but for the sake of establishing oneself as one's true nature by the means of Atimayana, right? I have been noticing that a lot of the texts around in teachings, there are passages that it talks as if the author or the guru is talking for yanis, talking for yanis is bad, there is no need for this, need for that, you are free, blah, 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 blah. But there is no point to talk to yanis. The help should be a conversation between a yani to anyanis. So, on the other hand, yeah, looking from the other end, we don't want to talk all the time, uh, you know, as, assuming that everybody is anyani. So we like to present how is the situation with the anyani, how is the situation with the yani, and our scriptures again and again likes to bring about a conversation from the yani explaining the situation of the yani for its students which are working to understand their nature so that they can quote unquote be called yanis. So it binds the person until it no longer binds the person. So if the person has a predominance of a lot of sattva guna, it has a potential of not be bound by sattva guna either, okay? Because sattva guna and the state of mind full of clarity, focus, and so on is going to be the best possible environment for the distraction or for the phenomenon which happens without effort when the conditions are proper. The self-recognition happens only when the individual is not efforting. Everybody tends to say that efforting, the last possible effort is still an obstacle. Therefore, rest in that mental condition. Remember the teachings, but don't make any rajasic desire. I want this final freedom. No, just remember it with gratitude. Not even pray, nothing. Just rest there. And then the self-recognition happens by itself in the same way. A mango fruit falls from the mango tree without the mango do any effort to drop. The method of binding would be different. Everyone of predominance here is going to bind differently. We have seen it. Swami is dramatizing and saying, no, now you killed me, Swamiji, because I was trying to develop a sattvic personality, having sattva guna influence in my life. And you're telling me that sattva guna is going to bind me. Yes and no. That's why I'm bringing this conversation. So if you think that to have a sattvic mind is the end of this process, final destination, or final accomplishment, you are wrong. Because sattva guna is a very trick kind of mental condition. It's going to produce nice experiences, which are still bound by time because they appear, they change and disappear. So you understand now, without the help of the scriptures or not, sooner or later, some people do not understand, pass their entire life going to visit those mental states, which depends on a sattvic reflecting medium, hoping that one day the reflection is going to appear and it's going to freeze itself and the individual is going to live in that state of bliss and peace and love and access for the rest of one's life. But no, it's a meteor phenomenon, and everything is meteor, is changing all the time. Therefore, don't kill yourself, because the purpose is not to develop and hold a sattvic state of mind. We don't want you to be addicted to any particular state of mind, because that is going to attach you to what? That kind of environment that helps you to have that kind of state of mind. Okay? Since you cannot control the environment and much less your state of mind, okay? So you better use those moments in which your mind is highly sattvic. Let the final declarations, if the individual is at that level in Nididhyasana, contemplate without any anxiety, with any demanding or anything, just remember one's nature, remembers one nature, stays there, mente is incredibly sattvic, and the insights are deeper at that level, and then self-knowledge may hit the individual, and then it will never again will be subject to forgetfulness. Otherwise, the Ahankara is going to be trying to change the setup again and again, again and again. It reminds me a little bit of Ramana Maharshi that had to change his physical address a few times, because when he went there, he went from one cave, and then there were some kids and people disturbing that environment. And then in the middle of the night, he used to migrate to another address, and then people will discover him. So the individual may be changing the environment for the rest of its life. I'm not criticizing Ramana. He wants to stay in that state. He was already, we never know, but as it seems, fully realized, but somehow his nature, his appearance nature was pure samadhi, and he wants to stay in that for whatsoever reason only Ishvara knows. But so much so that in the end he surrendered to the crowd around himself and say, okay, you want me to put me in a place where you can gather around me and somehow have something going, so be it. No? The solution is I should transcend the identification with these three gunas and the environments that sustain these three gunas. Otherwise, freedom is not free. How can I can become guna atita? Guna atita beyond the gunas. It's similar to nirguna. Nirguna is without attributes, and guna atita is before or beyond the attributes of the gunas. Now alone, we face a problem. Ahankara is nothing but the body-mind complex reflected. So, in other words, it's reflect consciousness. If it is a reflect consciousness, the reflection will never going to be free from the three gunas. So, in truth, the reflecting medium is made out of the subtle elements. Okay, but the only point, the only thing we need to understand, not to have confusion, is the elements in the subtle body. They are made up of the sattvic aspects, understand, of the elements, and therefore it is they are highly sattvic. Okay, later on they start mixing up. It's not that anyone and all of these subtle elements they are equally sattvic, because if you take earth on the subtle level, it has a little bit more of of properties, dense, tangible properties, but it's still subtle. Okay, so later on it's going to become manifest as the physical basic elements. But the mind of the individual, but the mind does not exist without the body. It's a complex. We have these 5 elements, and then there is a reflection that occurs in the body-mind-sense complex, more specifically on the subtle body, which is not a subtle body, as so to speak, for a jiva without it's anchored in a physical body. And then whatsoever reflection is going to be a reflection influenced by the 5 elements, which is another way to say that is reflect upon one's guna or saguna nature, the 3 gunas. So what is the problem Swami is trying to discuss here? How can I become nirguna? It's impossible. But it is possible. Again, another contradiction. Ahankara can never escape the gunas, bad news. Ahankara, by a process of betterment, can become only sattva guna. Okay, not only sattva guna, because it requires rajoguna and tamoguna to stay alive and hooked up to a physical body. Therefore, the ahankara can never live without the gunas, without its element, the most fundamental element, which is the 5 subtle elements constituting one subtle body. The question is, and then it means to say that there is a second entity within me. One is the reflect consciousness, and what is the other entity? Is there another body-mind complex different from the reflect body-mind sense complex? What else is there? Do you say there is nothing if there should be a reflect consciousness? If the mirror and reflect face on the mirror is there, it means to say that there is another entity, which is the real face. Okay? So there is a face reflecting in the mirror, therefore there is a face. That entity is something that is fundamentally part of our constitution, but it's not a part in the sense of part within many other parts. That is consciousness, that is the spirit, which does not belong to Mitya, but yet is not apart from Mitya. Not that consciousness is hooked to Mitya, but Mitya is a superimposition upon the screen of consciousness. So as we know, so consciousness is never there as part of Mitya. That's the concept that Satya is never Mitya, but Mitya is never apart from Satya because it's a superimposition or reflection upon consciousness. So what is the other factor within my guna nature, my saguna nature? Is my nirguna nature, my nirguna atma, which although is not part of my nirguna configuration, but is the substratum that keeps together my saguna configuration, but is the substratum that somehow holds my human superimposition upon that which is one's original consciousness, one's true nature, one's Sat Chaitanya, which manifests as witnessing consciousness. The original face and reflected face. Again, it reminds me when I was young and not much wise spiritually, I got in contact with the guru that I deserved. And here and there, he used to say things without elaborating anything, zero. And then we used to be like, we have to understand what he's trying to say. And he used to say, so you have to do this work to discover your true face. Find out what is your true face. My true face. And then we used to go into the mirror and look at my face. Say, no, this is not my true face. What is my true face? My true face, we used to talk about what is, it's so deep, it's so deep, it's so deep that we can never understand that. You can never understand because the guru was not trying to help you to understand. Because it involves a body of teachings and knowledge that is going to contextualize that final pointer, which says that there is this consciousness, which is a reflection such as in a mirror, is a reflect face within the mirror, which implies the real face. So consciousness as well, so to speak, is the medium on which everything reflects. The jiva reflect within this mirror of consciousness is a reflection. Find out what is the nature of this reflection called the body-mind-sense complex. It's not that you're going to find a subtle face looking exactly like you with a big nose. No, you're going to just see your true nature as the substratum of everything. Can Shakti become a guna atirtha? If you say no, it's impossible, it's wrong. If you say yes, it's also wrong. So can the jiva reflection become Buddha beyond guna or nirguna? No, it's impossible as a body-mind sense complex in its substantial nature. But it's also impossible, if you take it to be nirguna Brahman, because in its substantial nature is impossible, because no matter how sattvic it became, it's still dependent on the gunas, dependent on sattva guna. Okay? And it's impossible, really, for the body-mind sense complex to become guna tirtha or nirguna. Why? Because it has always been guna tirtha. It's always been nirguna. So it's one of those things, the jiva will never going to become guna tirtha because it has always been guna tirtha. And on the other hand, the jiva can never escape its guna tirtha for as long as we take the jiva atma to be the jiva of the atma, not the atma of the jiva, as sometimes I like to play with those concepts. Right? Now we following?
I missed the end of that last bit of sentence, Sarlindo. If you could just repeat that.
I'm playing with the concept here that we cannot escape the gunas, and we cannot do anything to become guna tirtha or nirguna. So why we cannot do anything? Because we already are guna tirtha, okay? We already guna tirtha. So now we cannot do anything for as long as we consider ourselves to be the body-mind-sense complex, because it is constituted by the three gunas. So you can never do anything to become nirguna, because you're already nirguna. And you cannot do anything for your body-mind-sense complex to become nirguna, because without the gunas, poof, there is no body-mind-sense complex. So higher nature, inferior nature, we cannot do anything in respect to the gunas, but we can do something in respect to the gunas, and any doing happens within the realm of our inferior nature, which is what? Develop more sattva guna so that we can understand the physical, subtle body-mind complex is going to always be defined by its gunas, but one's true nature is nirguna, and there is nothing we can do to become nirguna because we already are nirguna, but we must do a lot of effort to develop more sattva guna as far as our substantial appearance nature as body, mind, sense complex, which I refer to as the jiva of the Atma. We call jiva Atma In the past, I was playing with this Jiva of the Atma of the Jiva. We have to improve the Jiva within the Jiva Atma so that the Jiva can understand its Atma, Nirguna, nature. But this is a different kind of doing. It has nothing to do with verbal, mental, or physical activity, but it is gaining in nididhyasana, in deep contemplation, meditation, in the lives, contemplate the teachings of the Upanishads. Therefore, Ahankara cannot become Gunachita. Ahankara can never really avoid the gunas. Consciousness can never become Gunachita because it's already Nirguna. So nobody becomes Gunachita. Therefore, the very question is how to become Guna Achita. How Nirguna is wrong because you see, we always talk in terms of two layers, two levels, two orders. One is Satya, another Mitya. Our Satya nature, there is nothing we can do. This creates so much confusion in the spiritual world. And I was mentioning this weekend that I have been reading and listening more and more to the Ashta. What is the name of the book that you left with Sylvia? Ashtavakra.
Astavakra.
Ashtavakra Gita.
Gita.
Yeah. And I love it. I love it. I play sometimes as music while I'm cooking and doing other things, and it's lovely. But it is a conversation that comes from a sage that is describing the ultimate reality and the absurdity of trying to do anything because you all read that. But that is a song. That's why it's called the Gita. It's a wonderful song which describes the reality. But it's like, oh, I'm making these songs for whom? For all the yanis, for all the sages of the world. Because if you make it play to the anyanis are going to get confused. They are going to feel like there's nothing, I don't need to do anything, and so on. And we see it in the spiritual circles around the world. Ramesh Balsekar was one of them. There is nothing you can do. You are not the doer. You are consciousness. Stop everything. Call off the search. Don't meditate. Don't do anything because you already it. No. In the Ashtavakra Gita, it does not say don't do this, don't that, Don't. At least he puts it in clear language. Say, what's the point of me doing this? What's the point of me doing that? What's the point of me doing this? Because I'm this beauty. At least he was not passing on instructions of people not to do things. He was just stating reality, from the standpoint of an individual fully established in consciousness as consciousness. So I have to see if I'm going to teach that text without passing on these delusion notions to people that they better call off the search. Because I have had my experience with Vedanta Brazil. A few people dropped out from picking up those passages in the script that says you don't need to do anything because you read that. You understand? So what's the place for doing things, doing sadhanas, and what's the place for not doing anything because you read that? So both have their place, but for 99.9% of the people, we need to do certain things, but it's better we know that any doer only doing terms that spiritual sadhanas or effort, it serves only the purpose of preparing the body-mind sense complex to that moment in which everything must be stopped, anything and everything has to be rejected, and one has to sit, rest, and wait the grace of the Lord to manifest this Aparokshayana. Okay? So we meet tomorrow again. Are we good? Anything else?
I couldn't I couldn't detect a hint of Thomas in your teaching today. It was wonderful. Thank you.
It happens very often. It happens
Yeah.
very often. Once I connect with the scriptura, Ishwara comes and it just clean up the channel, and then it goes through. Namaste. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishate Om Shanti 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 Om Ishwara. Namaste. We meet tomorrow again. We meet in
Great. Thank you,
Mitya.
Arvinder.
We meet in Mitya or in Satya?
Both.
Okay.
In Mitya, but most on Sattva.
Namaste. Till tomorrow.
Okay. Thanks, Arvinder. Great class.
Thank you. Thank
Bye
you.
now.
Appreciate it. Bye-bye. Ciao.